A great many people claim that they know things. They'll say that I know this, I know that, I know the other. But in actuality, they don't know diddly. People simply make the claim that they know because they're using the feeling of the word, not the definition. People develop a feeling towards words throughout their life and they say that I know something. I know this, I know that, that's true. Oh yeah, that's a fact. Yep, that's correct. I know about this. I have information on that, when in actuality they're talking about things which cannot be confirmed, and therefore the claim of fact, truth, knowledge, or whatever the case may be, is simply false. How many people who actually consider themselves to be honest people actually make knowledge claims? Knowledge claims which they cannot support. Knowledge claims which they believe they can simply by saying, oh yes, we know this. And of course religion, you end up with religion all the time. We know this. This is something we know. Okay, we know that. We know this. So people simply make claims and they say that they know something, or they know something to be true, or something is true, something is a fact, something is information out there. We have knowledge of this. They simply make these statements without really supporting it. You get a knock on the door. Jehovah's Witness, perhaps. They might say something to the effect of, oh yes, of course we know that Jesus was the Saviour. How do you know that? And of course the believer has a series of arguments to simply say, this is how we know. They use selected information, they use passages from the Bible, they use persuasive arguments and a kind of philosophy that they have, and they try and support their worldview and try and say that they know. But even so, what they say they know, they cannot support sufficiently to say that they actually know it. You might go into a shop. It's a mystical gift shop, a kind of new age shop where you have people there buying crystals. A person starts up a conversation with you and you end up talking about crystals. They say crystals work for them. You say you're not sure. And they end up talking about how it's really worked for them, and by holding a piece of rose quartz, they feel happier instantaneously. So rather than talking from a question of belief in particular ideas in terms of like a Bible or a particular philosophy or a particular worldview, instead they actually have their own personal experiences. Now, where did they get those personal experiences from when they say that they know this works for them? Well, they're saying it works for them, as in they have felt an effect, but where did they get the idea that it works? From going into one of those sorts of shops out of curiosity and being convinced of the idea, perhaps reading up stuff on the internet, or getting a book on crystals and how they work with you, and learning about meditation, and if you meditate with your crystals, you'll feel the effect much, much stronger. So in many ways we allow ourselves to be indoctrinated by these ideas, whether it's from a religious organisation or from some kind of mystical perspective, or some kind of political perspective perhaps. How many political idealists hold on to the idea that they know something would work if we put it into effect around the world? The problem is it's very often non-specific, it's very often not very clear, and indeed very often based upon a very general analysis of the world based on their political belief. You have people touting certain systems and saying if we have equal money around the world, everyone gets paid the same, a perfect system but less regulated and less organised towards a central figure or system like communism is, then of course we could make it work. And in the kind of organisations where people discuss these ideas, these beliefs, where they all agree, it's simply a collection of people nodding their heads and saying, oh yes, of course. This is very often the problem with politics. You have people who agree, who come together and agree with each other, whereas the people who disagree with each other don't tend to mingle as much. Very much like religion, in fact, where people won't necessarily mingle in the same sort of way as they would with people who believe, and therefore they end up not sharing ideas in the same sort of way. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't be religion, and there probably wouldn't be the same sort of political animosity as you find between very closed systems or very devout kind of political points of view. Not to say if we shared ideas equally that we'd find that we all come to the same conclusions, but certainly it would change a lot of the problems and misconceptions about political opposition. And of course it would do one very important thing that an open society does, with those people who are less devout in terms of religion, less devout in terms of politics, where you have the idea of knowledge being questioned. And in such an environment you cannot say that you truly know. You cannot truly say that you know something to be so when you do not truly know, and other people have different opinions and they claim to know too. So you end up saying, I don't know, but this is what I reckon. I think this could work. It becomes more of a series of variables. And so you can say, this would probably work. I would think this would work. And then you say, well, we can adapt. We can change things that don't work and accept things that do. And from there, we can actually come up with some very interesting conclusions. That is to say, when you mingle different ideas, you develop a flexibility in terms of ideology, making the ideology itself less restrictive. The lack of a restrictive or limiting belief in whichever way allows you to actually consider things to be perhaps true, perhaps correct, perhaps this information is actually knowledge, or whatever the case may be. So rather than claims of knowing the truth, you come up with a position that allows you to doubt your own propositions and adapt them according to what might be actually confirmable. So I think inevitably there is a level of skepticism that develops out of a less restrictive belief. If you have less restrictive beliefs and you allow different ideas to meld with other ideas, you might well see some throwbacks to a kind of fundamentalism. You might see people clinging on to certain beliefs, but many people will move forward into a more sensible, rational skepticism.
But what on earth does that mean?
I don't know. Mr. Wentworth just told me to come in here and say that there was trouble at the mill, that's all. I didn't expect a kind of Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.